Hi, I'm here to introduce you formally to ABI 50B. This is a course where we really hope to introduce you to scientific literature. We want you to read lots of papers. We want you to discuss research papers with your colleagues. We want you to digest them. We want you to learn how to extract information from them and ultimately use the primary scientific literature as a foundation for oral presentations and also for some written assignments. So really, we want you to become very familiar with the concept of scientific literature, and we will talk specifically about what we mean with that later in the course. Um, you will also be exposed to peer reviews, meaning that you will receive an essay written by another student, and you will then have to provide constructive, meaningful feedback on that. And that's a process where you can learn a lot about how to do that and see also the writing styles of other people, and maybe pick up some tricks from that exercise. We will cover a series of basic elements of animal science. We will talk about the basic concept of science, what that is. We will talk about experimental science, how that can be done in sometimes with every even smaller, simple means. We'll talk about animal collections, museums, and citizen science, how you can get involved, how communities sort of contribute to the community of science. We will talk about data sampling. We will talk about data analysis. And from that, we hope to really encourage you to get interested in statistics and sort of the quantitative aspects of animal biology, how you convert observations, how you convert experiments, data that you have gathered in some way into something that can be analyzed and then associated with some sort of statistical probability, so that you can help generate not just sort of an idea of what the trends are, but actually put some significance to it, and use that as part of your analysis, your interpretation of whatever data you're going to be working with. And then we want to also talk briefly about this, what a species is, and we're going to play a little bit with that today also, with some of the concepts of science. So we're really sort of going to introduce you to the idea of science having a vocabulary, and that there are some elements in science that we need to sort of familiarize ourselves with. So with that, I want to get started, and again say that we are very pleased to have you on board here. These are all pre-recorded lectures, but we have decided to be available in the lecture slot on Thursdays from 10:30 to 11:50 local time, obviously here in Davis. So if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, if you have anything you want to share with us as instructors, this is the time where you can bring it up. You can also use that to schedule an individual appointment if you want that. You can also do that through email, but we will not be able to offer any face-to-face exchange with you, but we can meet with you live via Zoom, and then you can contact us via email, and we can maybe over phone or email or other means we can engage if that is needed. And in addition to myself, we have Emily, who is also like myself. We're both part of the Department of Entomology and Nematology. We are both available via email, so that's the way you can contact us. That's the most convenient way. Each of us have our own website, so you can sort of read about what the kind of research we are doing, what we are interested in, and you're more than welcome to engage in that. And then we're also very lucky to have Liz as our TA this quarter. So Liz will be heavily involved in sort of the nuts and bolts of running this course. So a lot of your communication can go through Liz as well. And then we want to highlight Elvira, with whom you may already have engaged. Elvira has been at the university for quite a number of years and has a lot of knowledge about the resources available to students. She knows a lot about the problems that students may face, the questions they might have. So, and she's a very open-minded, very, very warm and thoughtful person. So I really encourage you to contact her, set up an appointment with her, and maybe discuss some of your career goals with her, and she can certainly help you a lot in getting forward if you have any questions. So feel free to reach out to her. That will definitely not be waste of your time. She's a wonderful resource that we have. All right, so we are going to be using Canvas, and many of you, or hopefully all of you, are already familiar with Canvas. Um, but just so as different courses may be set up slightly differently, I'm going to go through how we have decided to do it in this course. So there are multiple tabs, and I appreciate that the view you see here may be slightly different from the view you have, but in general terms, you should have the same sort of tabs. The idea is you go into Canvas, you log in, and you have your courses, and you look up ABI 50B, and then we will offer the different lectures as modules. Okay, so the modules are listed with a link to the actual pre-recorded lecture, and also to the reading assignments. So for each lecture, there's a reading assignment, and those can be found in the modules. So that's where you want to look for that. Your grades, as we go along and we grade you, this is where you can keep track of how you're doing, how you're performing. There's a tab called Files, and I'll dig into that here in a second. That is where we have some very important files, and we want you to read all of them very, very carefully. I'll dig into them here in a second. And then, of course, we have the Zoom, and this is where we generate links to the weekly live sessions on Thursdays. Now, those, for the vast majority, are optional, meaning you don't have to come there if you don't want to. But I think it's a very good idea to sort of check in and see if what discussion is we are having, because some people may bring up stuff that is also relevant to you. And then there are 2 dates, and we will get back to that here in a little bit. There are 2 Thursdays where you absolutely have to be there. So familiarize yourself with these links and make as good an effort as you possibly can to be there to as many of them, to those Thursdays, as possible. And 2 of them you absolutely have to be there. All right. So if we dig into that that tab called Files there, you'll see that there's a folder called Admin, and in that admin folder, we have 4 different files, and I'm going to go through most of them here. So, and those you absolutely have to read very, very carefully, because they all provide essential information that will clarify many of the questions you might have. Now, is it possible that we missed something? Absolutely. Is it possible that we were incomplete, or there may even be some errors in here? Well, please share that with us, because we want those documents to be as complete and as accurate as possible. So definitely reach out to us, and we don't take any offense or anything if you say, hey, there's a spelling error, or there's something here that is not clear. We would love to hear from you in that way. We want that kind of dialogue with you. We are trying to constantly improve the quality of this course. So help us in that context, and understand that we value your input, that this is we cannot really have a lot of sort of interactive dialogue. We can on Thursdays, we can have a little bit of discussion, but this is, we truly respect your opinion, and we hope to hear from you if you think that there's something that needs to be improved, something that is not clear. So, but definitely you are expected to read these because many of the questions you might have will be answered in those documents. So the first one I want to mention is a file that's so this one right here, so resources to students, right, is a list that we have compiled where you have active links to different resources. That means if you, due to COVID or for other reasons, family matters, if you under like many people do, not just students, also faculty and others, everybody are in sort of the same boat here, and we all recognize that mental health is a serious problem for all of us, and we respect that immensely. So the university is offering resources, and you are perfectly entitled to take advantage of those. You definitely should. So we're listing those sort of mental health. There are different counseling services. There's also a foods insecurity is something that is an issue for you. There are links. There are even, I know that Elvira and others actually keep a little bit of food sort of in a fridge somewhere. And so there are services available, and we certainly hope that you will take advantage of them if you think you need help, or if you know of somebody that needs help. And when I say this, I'm not in any way pushing sort of the responsibility to other to other parts of the university. We as instructors, Emily and I, are definitely also committed to, if you feel comfortable sharing something with us and you think that we can in some ways help you, we are certainly also just an email or a phone call away. So we we are here as a team, all of us together, and we all either succeed or fail. It's about all of us succeeding together. So if you need help, please reach out to us, to your fellow students, to family, to the resources on campus, to us. We are here, and we really want you to get as much out of this experience as you possibly can. And we understand that people at different times have curveballs thrown at them. Things happen. They do, and they are out of our control. And none of us can handle everything by ourselves. So we respect that. Um, and we are in particularly interested in, if in some ways you start sort of falling behind, or you feel that you are under immense pressure, we are very much hoping that you will escalate and communicate that to us in advance. So even though you may be in a rough spot and say, "Oh, I can't handle emailing Christian right now," please do anyway, because it's I cannot know what goes on in your life, and neither can Emily. So we need to know if you are sort of uh, if you are in a stress situation. So escalate that to us, and then we may be able to help you out or accommodate it, and in other ways help you sort of overcome these issues and get back on track. So please take this list, and it's as a PDF. You can take it, you can send it to your fellow students, to others you think that might need this. Another file in that admin folder is the lecture schedule, which I'm sharing with you here. So several things to mention here. First of all, you can see that we have, this is the first lecture we're having today, right, on January 5th. And we have a total of 20, what we call sessions, lined up over the next 10 weeks. And you can see here, so there's different leads. So I will take the lead on the first. So Christian Nansen, that's me, right? And Emily is the lead on some of the others. So so you can see who will be preparing the pre-recorded lectures. You can also see that we have color-coded them into sort of multiple categories. So these first ones, we consider them green, which is sort of introductory and more general, so about oral presentations and about the writing of essays and scientific writing. I'm going to be talking about that. And in between, We have sort of sprinkled some lectures on the philosophy of science and sort of some of the science in the news and that kind of stuff, and science communication, which is something we want to talk about. And I'm going to give a lecture on experimental science. And don't forget that's a lot of this is driven by the fact that you, as part of this um, animal biology major, you have to complete a practicum, which means that you have to make contact with a lab manager, somebody like me or Emily or somebody else at the university, and you have to be part of some sort of project. And maybe you have to collect data, maybe you have to analyze data, but you certainly, no matter what, you certainly have to read a lot of scientific literature. You have to, in many ways, engage with science, and that's part of what we are preparing you for with these different sort of categories of lectures that we have. So then Emily is going to talk about museums and animal biology and some different ways that the society is sort of involved in collections and in assessments of biodiversity in urban environment. I'm going to talk about some quantitative aspects of animal biology, so how to collect data, and once you have the data, how to analyze them. And this is very, very relevant for your practicum. It's also very relevant for you if you're going to go to grad school later on. So we're sort of exposing you to some of the elements that down the road will be very important to you. And then we end up with a very engaging, very, very interesting guest lecture by a former ABI 50B student who is now in a vet clinic, and this is Andrew, and he will talk about how and why the animal biology ABI 50B, why he, looking back, why he thinks that this prepared him extremely well for vet school and for his career path. So this is sort of the logic. This is this. So there's this sort of color coding of the different themes that we're trying to put together. And then you also see that there's a column where we have lecture reviews, and that's because we do not have midterm, we do not have exams in this course. This is something we have abandoned, and instead we are expecting you to submit. These are mandatory reviews, and you have to submit them either as a written, some of them have to be in a written format, and some of them have to be in a video format. And the reason why we do both is because we want you to get experience in doing both. And you are going to be doing oral presentations in groups, which is something I'll talk about on January 7th, specifically about that. So you have to prepare videos. So there's some techniques, sort of some logistics about that we want you to learn about. And you have to do it in groups. So there's sort of more dimensions to it. But we want you really to walk away from this course when we get to mid-March and have a much better understanding of what it takes to be a good communicator, science communicator, both in writing but also in front of a camera and working in groups. So that's why we have sort of decided to put a lot of eggs in that particular basket there. And then right, so then there's another file in that admin folder, and we call that important dates. And that is really, really important because that shows you, gives you sort of, this should go into your calendar, whether it's on your phone or your computer or wherever. You should put all of these dates into your, whatever device you're using to manage your time. And you can see some of them are not color coded. They're just sort of the basic gray. And then some of them are green. The green ones are the ones where we have to get something back to you. So this is when you should expect to receive your grades or your reviews or whatnot. And you can see here, so I mentioned very early on that there are 2 dates where you absolutely have to be in class. And you can see that is January 14th and that is February 11th. And if we just go back for a second, right? So you can see group picks a paper. That is exactly this date right here, January 14th, and February 11th is down here. These are 2 key dates where you have to be in class. You have to be available. You will be divided into groups. Again, something I'll talk about next week when we talk about oral presentations, but these are very, very important dates. And then there are dates for when you have to upload different things, when you have to submit things. And you have to understand where we're coming from with all of this. So we want you to, you are now, we consider you adult people. We consider you very smart people because you made it into this university, and there are certain criteria that have to be met. So you check all the boxes for being somebody who's adult, mature, and bright. So you can understand this. And that means that we have to follow certain rules. And one of the rules is that we should all be treated equally, that everybody needs to meet the same criteria. Everybody has to obey by the same rules, right? So this file right here is basically the timeline, and these are the rules. We cannot have people submit at different times and some people have more time than others. That is not fair to the people who obey by the rules. So you have to understand that this is our way of this is part of our way of treating everybody equal and being very upfront on first lecture, letting you know when you have to submit your deadlines, you have to submit your assignments in Canvas, right? This is what you're looking at right here. Now, I've already mentioned that we understand that there are mental health issues and things can happen. You can fall on a bicycle and other things, more traumatic even, that happens. And we understand that. But you need to escalate, you need to disseminate that ahead of time. So if you have to submit something on January 28th, and you let us know February 5th that you were not able to do this because blah, blah, blah. See, that's not cool. That's not the way to do this, okay? We need to know early on, and ideally, preferably before the deadline, what is going on and how we can, and we need to engage in a communication about how we can handle this. So by sharing this, we're being very upfront about when we need things from you, what we are expecting from you, and we expect that you take this seriously and therefore also communicate to us if any of this becomes an issue down the road. So it doesn't include the lecture reviews, which are submitted as separate assignments, because there will be a mandatory review of all of the lectures, so we didn't need to put them in here. But you need to learn how to look at assignments in Canvas. So let's just have a quick look at that. So that's one of the other tabs, right? So you have an assignment, and you can see I've already put up the first ones here. So you can see that the first one, so the review of this particular lecture has to be written, but the one that comes up next will be available on January 7th, and you will have basically 4 days after each of the sessions to complete your review, whether that being written or a video. So this is where you're going to find them, and this is where you're going to submit it, and you can see all of them are worth 20 points. So and for the written reviews, you have, well, actually for both of them, in both cases, whether it's we're just giving you experience in two different ways of basically disseminating the same information, right? So it's either written or oral. But in both cases, you have to view the entire lecture, and you have to select a minimum of 2 slides from each lecture, and then you have to discuss them and explain to us why you think those 2 slides are so important. You have to also talk why you think they're important, to what is the essential information that is being conveyed on those slides, why did you pick them, and why do you think those slides are particularly important for somebody like you majoring in animal biology, right? And there's definitely in the syllabus, which is another file in that admin folder, you will find more information. And this is absolutely critical that you go back and read the course syllabus so you understand what we are expecting from you, what you need to submit so that you can get the 20 points. That's why we lay out exactly in the syllabus, we explain what we expect. If you send something else It may be good quality, but if it doesn't meet what we are expecting from you, then we cannot give you 20 points because we have to treat everybody equal. So everybody has to learn to follow the same rules. So definitely go to the course syllabus and make sure you understand what is expected when it comes to these lecture reviews. Okay. And just to sort of the main highlights is that the written review is supposed to be somewhere between 500 and 850 words. Okay, we don't do pages, we don't do any of that stuff. We do how many words. Okay, and it has to be submitted as a PDF file, not as a Word, not as some Google Doc or anything. Submitted as a PDF. Follow the rules, right? And the videos, I'm going to show you here in a little bit how we recommend that you do your videos, but we do understand that you have choices out there. So we work primarily in Zoom, and that's because it's freely available to you. So we don't want to expect people to sort of, we may have compatibility problems with computers and whatnot, and there are some programs that are cost money and all that stuff. So we're not expecting you to spend any money on that. So that's why we are delivering or suggesting that you make your video communication via Zoom. It works. It may not be the prettiest, it may not be the easiest to edit and whatnot, but it works. Okay. Now other resources are available, and of course because of COVID, there's been sort of an explosion in these tools out there. I just want to mention two that I have dabbled a little bit with and which I think are very good. And you might think about these is look up Loom, look up Biteable. These are, and you can look up YouTube videos and see how other people, they're very slick and they're free. Both of them for now. I don't know how it's going to be in the future. Who knows? But those are differently options you have. And this is kind of cool. This is not part of the curriculum per se to become good at video editing and whatnot, but many of you are doing Snapchat and TikTok and all these other things that I know nothing about, but I have daughters who do it all the time, so I'm a little bit familiar with it. So this shouldn't be completely new territory for you, and in fact I will argue that it could be in many ways very, very relevant to your major, because being good at communicating and knowing how to present sort of visual gadgets and in a engaging, creative way present science communication, fantastic. So we are all about you learning and experimenting with different ways of generating your lecture reviews and your oral presentations, but they have to be submitted as an MP4 format via Canvas, and that's just because we don't want to install specific software for us to look at your videos and whatnot. So again, we want to treat everybody equal, and that's why we have to set standards. So you have to submit your lecture reviews as in MP format, just like you have to submit the written ones as PDF files. But again, look at the syllabus, because this is where you will find more information. And if things are not clear, let us know and communicate it with us, because if you don't understand it, it's very likely that other people are in the same boat. So you can actually help everybody do a better job by communicating with us what you felt was not clear in the files that were shared with you, or in this particular lecture about it. So now I'm going to show you a little video of how to use Zoom to make your own lecture review. Okay, I'm going to try to do this. This is a little bit complicated because I'm trying to show you how to record. I'm recording how to record. So it's a little bit tricky here, but I hope you can understand and follow me. So I have basically opened up Zoom on my computer. I then go to share screen, which is supposedly I want to talk about certain slides. So let's pretend that I'm going to be talking about this slide 7 here. So this slide right here. So now I'm here. I have the 2 slides that I want to do my lecture review on. I have them selected out as my slides, and I then go into into slides show mode here, and now you can see that I am being I have it here. I would then go to here, and then I would up to more here, and I would say record this on my computer, and then it would be recording not only the screen, the slides, but there would also be your face streaming on the slides. And then once you're done talking for 3 to 4 minutes about your slides, you will then say stop recording, and it will automatically generate a file that you can then rename, and you can use that as your lecture review assignment. So I hope that that makes sense, that you understand how that works, and maybe you've already done it in other classes. So once you have clicked that stop recording file, it will automatically start. Zoom, that is, will automatically start converting the little video that you collected into an MP4 file. So you can see, you just took a screenshot, so you can basically see how it's that something is that it's converting, that it's starting to create that file. And then automatically, typically in your documents on your computer, it will create 3 files: an audio, a playback, and a zoom. And it's this zoom file that will essentially have all the information that you need. You can then copy that, label it whatever you want to call it, lecture review 2, or whatever you want to call it, and then that you can upload that to Canvas, and that will be your assignment. We don't have any in Zoom. We don't have any options to edit it, so you would need some additional software to edit it. But we are expecting that you either sort of repeat it a couple of times to get it right. If you've or that you find a way to edit it. That's sort of at your discretion, whatever you want to do. All right. There in the syllabus, so the another file in that admin folder is of course the syllabus, where you have much more detailed information about the expectations and the different assignments that you will be doing. But what you're also interested in knowing, of course, is how you can get a very good grade in this course. And we basically decided to use the total score of 1,000 points. So that gives you the maximum grade here. And you can see that there are 7 written lecture reviews and 6 video reviews. And each of them are 20 points. You will be giving oral presentations as groups, and all group members will be given the same grade. And the way the oral presentations are graded is that you as students will be reviewing other students' presentations and grade them. So you will be giving so each presentation can get up to 100 points by peers, by other students, and they can get up to 100 points by us as instructors. So you are basically in charge of, say, about a third of the grade. And then also you have to give reviews of some of these presentations. So you are actually expected to give some feedback. So that is, in addition to giving grade, you're also going to give them feedback. Then you're going to write an essay about the paper that was used to produce the oral presentation in groups. And I do appreciate that a lot of this is complicated at this point in time. It will become somewhat clearer in the next couple of lectures. But essentially, you can see that you have to bring on those critical dates that I mentioned. I think it was January 14th and February 11th. You have to bring these papers to class. Then the group has to decide which paper of the 2 or 3 group members, which one you want to use for your oral presentation. You have to prepare an oral presentation. That oral presentation is graded by instructors and by peers. There's going to be some review where you as a student are going to give constructive feedback on the presentation. You are going to write individual essays about that paper. So you really wanted to pick a very good paper. And then you also have to, in the first time you do all this, you have to write a review. You will be given another student's essay, and you will have to review that. And that will also be graded. So your ability to give constructive feedback is being assessed both here with the oral presentations and also by the written essay that is being submitted by each of the students. And then we do most of it again, meaning you have to give 2 oral presentations. You will be in 2 different groups. So not the same group members the second time around, but you will have the opportunity to go through this whole motion one more time. And it's been our experience that students really appreciate going through this twice, because then they have the experience from the first round to really do much better and feel much more comfortable the second time around. So when we get to mid-March, you will have lots of experience here. So these are really the only assignments that you're going to have. It's the lecture reviews, and it's what's related to the oral presentations and the essays that you're going to be writing. Now, there are some bonus points to be given out, because we have a little the groups, when they meet on those 2 critical dates, they have to pick one paper, and the student whose paper is being selected by the group will get 25 points. So that's another incentive for you to put a lot of effort into choosing a very good paper. Very, very important. And we'll talk briefly here about why it's so critical that you, from the get-go, as soon as possible, you start looking into these papers and look at what you can do to how you can come to class on those 2 important dates with the best possible paper. What does what does a good paper, what does that mean? I'll give you some feedback on that. But have a look at it. Just do the math here, okay? So all of these points, so out of 1,000 points, 320 are associated with that first paper being selected, okay? So that's over 1/3 of the grade. And then it goes up in the second round, because we're actually going to give you even more points for your essays, because now we expect you to do an even better job on your essays, because you now have much more experience. So you can see almost 700 points in total. And if you pick the best, if your paper is being picked twice, you get another 50 points, right? So you are really in a position here to make a mark and really set yourself up for doing well in the class if you pick a good paper. Again, on these January 14th and February 11th, the critical dates here. So let's talk about what a good paper is, okay? So be at these classes, because imagine you are not at this stage. Suppose you decide for some reason not to be present on those days. What group are you going to be part of? What paper are you going to be part of? You on these dates are going to decide how you're going to organize, who's going to do what, how are the presentations going to be structured. You're not going to be part of that conversation. So you're going to be missing out on huge parts of not only what paper is being selected, but also who's going to be doing what. So we cannot have students missing on those dates. That's just not, that will just make you will miss out on huge parts of the course. So you have to be there on those particular dates. So because these articles that you pick for those 2 dates are so important, let's talk a little bit about what we expect from you to choose. So we are not allowing you to pick a review or an opinion paper. It has to be peer reviewed. It has to be from a scientific journal. It cannot just be a website. Okay, it has to be peer reviewed. It cannot be a review or an opinion. So there has to be materials and methods in there. There has to be data being analyzed in one way or the other in that paper. Review papers are typically papers where people will read a whole bunch of papers and then interpret and put data together that other people have gathered. That's not what we want. Or they write an opinion paper where they, based on trends in all these papers, they sort of conclude something. We want actual experiments being conducted. So there has to be materials and methods. It must be primary literature. It cannot be a website. It has to be a scientific journal. So it has to be peer reviewed. It has, and we will talk about that also, but you can, if you're in doubt, you are more than welcome to email either Emily or I or Liz, and we can help you out. But you're looking for scientific journals where the materials, where the primary literature has been peer reviewed, meaning that it has been analyzed and it has been assessed by other scientists. Okay. So, and we recommend, just because that is the easiest way to go, that you go into Google Scholar and then you go from there. So you can then put in keywords. So what article should you be choosing? Well, you can approach this in multiple different ways, but instead of feeling scared, intimidated, think about this as an opportunity for you to start learning about different things. So maybe you saw or heard something about octopies, or you were interested in camels, or in some reptile, or fish conservation, or behavior, or something. So think about what you're interested in and think of this as an opportunity for you to learn more about what you already have and sort of an emerging interest in. Or maybe there's certain kinds of surgery or treatment of horses or seals or whatever. This is your opportunity to learn something about it and then share it with some of your peers. So really think of it as now you can be in charge here. You can decide what you want to learn more about and look at it that way. And then enter different search words in Google Scholar, right? So if you're interested in animal behavior, it could be sort of something about how they select their host plants or their host species if you're interested in mosquitoes, or it could be something about if you're interested in elephants and disease, vascular diseases or some other things. You could use that and capitalized and then it will give you everything that has elephants and vascular tissues in it, especially if you put it in quotation marks. So you can pick whatever there and see what pops up, and then have a look at that article, read the abstract, hopefully get the full paper. Go through different papers, make yourself a big pot of tea or coffee, and spend some quality time here on looking into different kinds of literature. This is really your opportunity to learn a lot. And then think about what's going to happen. You're going to show up in your group, and other people in your group are going to have done the same thing, but they have gone in completely different directions because they're approaching this from different angles. So you're going to now be sitting and talking about these papers with completely different, where you went through different processes, and then you're going to hear what other people picked and why they picked these papers, and you're going to learn a lot in that process. Okay? And we are recommending that you pick a somewhat recent paper. Don't pick one from 1973 or something. Pick something that is recent, so within the last 5 years or so. And the simple reason being that we want you to be up to date. We want you to know the most contemporary, the most recent research in that field. So you can go further back, but we really encourage you to pick something that is reason for that reason, that it gives you an opportunity to learn what is known, what is the sort of the status quo in that particular field. And if you are unable to, for whatever reason, not to access the actual article, you're more than welcome to contact us and we will see what we can do. We will try to help you as much as we can. We cannot promise, but at least do that. And this is also why you don't want to do this the night before, right? You want to do this in advance. You don't know where you're going to end up. You don't want to sit at 4 o'clock in the morning and then suddenly you don't have access to the information that you want. Because if you don't email us well in advance, we know that you were not particularly interested and you started this three hours before or the day before. Well, that means that you don't care. Then we shouldn't care either, right? So it's a two-way street here. So start this process as early as you possibly can. um, and we really, so there has to be animals involved. It cannot be about plants, it cannot be about fungi or bacteria. It has to be about, but they can be part of the story, but the main focus has to be about an animal, right, and its biology in some aspect. But it can be genetics, it can be behavior, it can be conservation, it can be sampling, it can be whatever. And even think about, maybe you were part of a project, or maybe you're interested in joining a project. So maybe you want to learn more about this. Maybe you have heard that there's some research about elk, and you're really interested in elk, and you're actually thinking of your practicum one day. You would really like to work with these guys that do work a project on elk. Well, here's your opportunity to learn something about elk and what have they done. And then you can, later on when you contact them, you can actually use some of that information as part of you sort of trying to get interested in getting you involved. So really think about this, not so much as an assignment, but much more as an opportunity for you to learn and explore. Okay, that's something we really encourage you to do. And we want you to choose something, a project that is not overly, a paper that is not so complicated that you can't explain it. Something that where the results are truly interesting to you, and where you can make a personal connection, where you can appreciate why this is important, and you can also therefore convey when you give your oral presentation and when you write about it, that this is something you're passionate about, something you think is really important, because that will show up in your scientific communication, and that's what we are looking for. We're not looking for something specifically about eels or insects, or we don't care about that. We care about it being relevant to you. And we want to hear from you why this is important to you. So we're trying to sort of flip the classroom a little bit, and let you tell us why you think this is important. And we really want you to drive this whole process here. It can also be about some methods. Maybe they use some technologies. They used drones. They used smartphones. They used some sort of sonar or submarine equipment or something that was just really cool. Um, Fine, that's totally fine, as long as it's about animals. We want you to be excited, and we want you to have the freedom to go in whatever direction as you want. And we understand that that may be uncomfortable, that we are not telling you it has to be about elephants, or it has to be about some fish species. No, we're giving you complete freedom, but that's what we want. We understand that that is somewhat uncomfortable, but that is also what we want. It's a freedom that we want you to start getting more and more familiar with, and maybe even feel comfortable with one day, because that is what science is about exploring. And think about it also, how can you pitch your story, how can you use this paper as a way to tell something broader about the importance of climate change, or conservation, or urban development, or behavior connection between animals and people in treatment, or animals as model species in scientific development. Whatever, what is sort of the hook, what is the bigger picture that you want to sort of convey to an audience, so that even though it is a study about a specific species or a couple of species, there's a broader story here that could be relevant to a broader audience. What is that? That's what we want you to make the connection to, so that people, even though you are so passionate about these parrots, or yeah, bird of prey, even for people who are not interested in those particular animals, they may still feel a connection. You are still able to, in some way, connect this story to whatever they are interested in. So think of it as very important that you are trying to tell a broader story here. And you, of course, have to understand the article. Don't pick something that is so complicated that you have no clue. Then you won't be able to sell it. We can't explain something we don't understand, right? That's pretty obvious. So definitely before you come to class on those critical dates, before you select, you have to read multiple papers and then select one that you think you like the most, you think would lend itself the best for this oral presentation that your group is going to give and that you are going to be writing an essay about. Very important. And you should then have read these articles. You should have prepared a summary so that when you meet in live in a Zoom classroom, in a virtual classroom, you can explain it. You should highlight what is important. You may even have prepared some PowerPoint slides so you can share screens and show them, okay, so this is why I think it's important. This is what are the key messages, and this is how we can use it to tell a story about something broader, about conservation, or how smart animals are, or whatever. And yeah, absolutely. So these points sort of are self explanatory, and you cannot do this if you start this the night before January 14th. You're screwed. I'm sorry. This is going to take time. And think of it as an opportunity again to really learn about all sorts of things, and also learn about using Google Scholar and whatnot. So this is really a very interesting opportunity that you have, that we're giving you, I think. Now, this is now we have to talk a little bit about a topic that is quite serious, and something that we have recently, especially because we moved to online teaching here, has become an even bigger issue than it was in the past, and that's plagiarism and scientific writing. So I'm going to just let you know that we have tools at our disposal that allows us to check for plagiarism. And plagiarism is basically like cheating. Okay, it is like doping in sports. It is like not following the rules. It is not allowed, and you are obliged to. And there's a link to this. This is also in the syllabus. You must read the Code of Conduct of Academic Conduct. And it is against the law to perform plagiarism. It is not allowed, and it could, in the extreme case, lead to you being expelled from the university. So this is not something we take lightly, and it also sort of adds to what I mentioned earlier about we want to treat everybody equally. So we are not allowing this because cheating is just not allowed. Period. Okay. If we see clear indications of plagiarism, we will forward this case to the Office of Student Support and Judicial Affairs. We are not police people, Emily and I, so we are not going to handle it. We're going to let the university handle it their way. It is not our, so it gets escalated to people that, and it's going to get handled by the police. Just like if you have a break-in in your room or something happens, you call the police, and the police will then handle it, and maybe the burglar or whoever will be taken to court. There's a process there. That's not, I don't handle that myself. We, as in the society, we have mechanisms, we have entities handling that. The same thing in this course. If plagiarism happens, we will escalate it, and then it's out of our hands. So it's not us. It's not going to be with us you're going to be dealing with. It's going to be with the university's administration. And I really encourage you not to go down that path. It's not a winning proposition. This is not something you want to get into. So plagiarism is something I mean, in today's age with computers, it's fairly simple. It's actually been automated. So all the written assignments are going to be evaluated automatically by something called Turnitin. And this is an example from from a previous quarter, where somebody submitted an essay, and 53% of the language in that essay was actually found in other written sources. And Turnitin will calculate that for us. So it's not like I am sitting, or Emily or Liz, that we are sitting individually and reading and knowing all the literature out there. No, this software does it for us. And if we see a number like that, we it's going straight to Office of Student Support and Judicial Affairs. It's that is just so too high. Of course there's going to be words that are similar, and so there's a limit, so we look at it. I just want to show you, if I click on this number here in Canvas, this is all done through Canvas, something like this pops up. Okay, so you can see that this all of this language here was taken straight out of the article. This student just added one of two words here and there, but essentially this was just regurgitation of what was already in the article. And that's what we don't want. You're supposed to, in your own words, explain what is going on, what is being said in the article. You can use some of the same, I mean, the key words, you can clearly use those. But when we have long sentences like this, where even the start, so this sentence here was identical for the last part, and then continued on into the next sentence. See, this is plagiarism. Okay, that's in my words, in my opinion. So if I see significant amounts of this, I just send it off. So don't. It's very easy. It's going to happen. Okay. So avoid this at all costs. Okay. Don't copy text from any articles and consider it your own words. So that's strong indication of plagiarism. If there's too much of this will potentially cause trouble for you. So do whatever you can to avoid that. All right, so now we're going to switch gears completely and talk. So this is sort of finishes the initial introduction to the course itself. Now we're going to talk more broadly about some of the concepts, and I'm going to start out with science, and we're going to briefly sort of tap into the little article that I gave you to read prior to this lecture. So think about for a second what science is. What do you perceive as science? What is science and what is not science becomes very easily a question that we can think about. And I gave you this article about the black autumn bees for a couple of important reasons. And let me start by saying that Biology Letters is a very, very old, very respected scientific journal. Okay, so when we as scientists, we look around and we look for outlets, we look for scientific journals to publish our papers in. Biology Letters would be one of those that are very well accredited. This is certainly a respected journal. So, what is interesting about this article is, first of all, you can see there's a lot of authors on this, but when you really start looking at it, you will see that the authors were primary school students, right? So the reason why I wanted you to read this particular article, and why this article is very unique, is because I think it rocks the boat in one very, very important area, and one thing that I want you to be very comfortable with from the get-go, and that is the concepts of science and scientists. What is science? So, and who are you a scientist? Am I a scientist? Who can be a scientist? Well, these are primary students. They are 10, 11 years old, okay? And they are authors on a scientific paper. Meaning, if you are sitting there in your home or dorm or wherever you are, and you are intimidated about science and whether you think you are worthy of being a scientist or considered a scientist, well, hopefully I am breaking that glass ceiling for you here, because we can all consider ourselves scientists if we approach a certain problem or challenge, or if we use our resources and creativity in a particular way that follows sort of the rules of science. So this is sort of a little excerpt from the article that I just find absolutely beautiful, so that Real science has the potential to not only amaze, but also transform the world one thinks of the world and oneself. This is because the process of science is little different from the deeply resonant natural processes of play. Play enables humans um, to discover relationships and patterns. I mean, the language here is just, I wish I had written this. This is, to me, just so beautiful. And it demystifies, I think, the whole concept of science, and how we should think of science as a way to play, as a way to experiment, to be curious. And that is really what we hope that you will embrace by going through this course with us. We will hopefully give you some of the tools that will allow you to start questions and being even comfortable when things may be a little bit uncomfortable, when we have a lot of freedom, when we have uncertainty. How do we deal with those conditions, and how do we turn them into conditions that we can actually use as a framework to conduct research? That is, in essence, what we are trying to do here. So read this paper and look at it and think about how this could have been you. And if these kids can do this with bees, if they can learn about how bees can learn, if they can, and how they can differentiate between colors and patterns and use that information, think about all the things that can be done and could be done, and how you should think of this as a source of inspiration for you yourself pursue a career that is sort of, that hinges on science in some way. That is really why we want you to read this paper. And we want you to think. So I'm from Denmark, right? So I Lego is what I grew up with, and sort of in my DNA. And I think in many ways that you can look at science as a process of acquiring building blocks. That there are different colors, shapes, and sizes of things. These are different things that you can become good at, and you can put them together in particular ways, and then you can build something beautiful, which is an experiment. And hopefully somebody can use this to cure something, or to save a species, or to in other ways have better understanding of what's going on in the world, right? So what are these Lego blocks? What are these entities that we need to learn along the way? Well, that's your journey, that's my journey, it's your journey, and we are all gonna acquire different Lego blocks and have different constellations and put them in different ways. That's why we're all different, and then that's why we're all going to be looking at science in different ways. But ultimately, we're going to be using the same building blocks, and we're going to try to define for you what those building blocks can be, and what some of them should be. And we're going to hand some of them to you so that you can walk away with some of these, and then go out and acquire even more and become successful in whatever way you decide to in the future. And when we look at these Lego blocks, one of them, and we put them together, and there are these rules that constitute the way we play, the way we experiment, the way we view the world. We are fundamentally assuming, and this is really important, that things can be measured and predicted, that things can be described in a very sort of quantitative way. That is one of the ways that science is different from, say, religion, which is something we'll talk about more later on. We are also so things can be defined and things can be predicted, which means that we are expecting certain things to be sort of linked in a causal cause-effect relationship. That if we feed an animal in a particular way, if we breed these organisms, these animals under these conditions, this is going to happen, right? So if we perform this kind of surgery on this dog, this is what's going to happen. That's a cause effect relationship. If we give it this type of medicine, if we preserve this forest, then this is what's going to happen. If we change the weather temperature, the water temperature or acidity in the ocean, this is what's going to happen to the coral reefs, right? We're looking at sort of cause effect relationships between the organisms and the environment that they are part of. This is sort of at the very rock bottom, or at the very sort of top level, how we are viewing science. This is how we approach the whole idea of science, is that we can identify units, and we can also that units are affecting each other in certain predictable ways, so that we can develop hypotheses about these outcomes. And those are the ones that we're trying to test. That ends up being the hypothesis that we are essentially setting up experiments to prove or disprove, right? And we also use terminology. We have very, very specific words. We have definitions that we use as part of developing this concept, this scientific framework that we're going to be working under. And this is where it starts getting sort of, I think you can agree and you can follow me on all of this, but very, very quickly, I need to alert you that there's considerable amounts of uncomfort associated with this, and we're going to dig into that sort of in a little bit, right? But let's start with some of the many sort of very specific words. So this vocabulary we have, that different areas of science have different words. So we talk about animals being heterotroph because they are not autotroph. They don't produce their own nutrients, right? They are multivoltine. So this is just in one word saying that one animal has multiple generations within a year. It's not univoltine, not just one. It has multiple. So it can have positive anemotactic flight. These are just sort of because it flies in a particular way up against a light or a pheromone source. It can be a parasitoid that has a certain lifestyle. It can be giving birth to live animal, to live offspring instead of eggs. And they can be in a sort of evolutionary context. Clades or groups of animals can be sort of expected to have the same ancestor, so they are a monophyletic group. So these are just sort of terms that are being used in very different ways. We're not expecting you to memorize or particularly study those, but we are expecting you to appreciate that if, as you dwell into a certain area of research, you have to learn a certain body of a certain vocabulary. There are going to be words that people in this field use, and you have to learn to use these, and you have to understand that the reason why there is a language associated with each field is because things have to be as square, has to be as defined as we possibly can. So they become sort of Lego blocks. So we know that we are all talking about the same thing. Okay? So that's very, very important. And they sort of linked together to set things in stone. But we also understand that these definitions and these words may change. The meaning of them may actually change over time. So this is where it gets really complicated. But also the reality of things. And to give you sort of a little bit of a funny example of what I'm talking about and where things start sort of getting more complicated is I was in Atlanta, in Georgia, in the airport in Atlanta, and I walk into this bookstore in between flights because I wanted something to read. And you can see at the back end here there's some bookcases with lots of books. And if we look a little closer, we can see that these titles, you can see that there are these titles right there. So if we look at them, so there's one category of children's, and then there are young adults, and then there are African Americans, and then there's a whole bunch of others. In fact, this was the list of categories that they had. So children's, business, nonfiction, classics, young adult, African American. Think about this list for a second. And think about what I was just talking about, categories, about Lego blocks and definitions, and think about why I, as a scientist, probably had a little bit of an issue here, right? What is wrong here? What stands out as something that is very, very problematic potentially? Well, let me give you a hint here. Okay, so according to this, right? You have a category of classics, but you also have a category of African American. So what if an African American was a classic? What if a young adult created a sci mystery? In other words, these categories are not mutually exclusive. That's the key word here. When we categorize things, and whether that is species of animals or whether this is sort of how we group things, a big part of science is creating these boxes, these Lego blocks, these definitions. Is these definitions need to be as rock solid, as independent, and as discrete as possible. And here we have a classic example of something that was done really, really poorly. That could potentially offend a lot of people, especially in places like Atlanta, of all places. Um, so this is where science needs to come in, where some taxonomists would need to approach this and say, whoa, we need to come up with some much clever, much smarter categories, because these are not mutually exclusive. A book can easily be in one, two, or three, in more than one category, right? So this is a very bad example of how how classification was not done properly, and where a scientific approach would actually require that we thought a lot more carefully about our units. Now, here's another unit that I want to talk about, and this is where the uncomfortability sort of starts really kicking into gear, but something that I'm very happy to do, and something I think that is very important as part of the scientific process, which is get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So let me ask you this very, very simple question. What is a forest? How would you define a forest? Try to do that for me and think about that and realize how difficult that is. So we're talking about something that, a word that even a 3-year-old can say and would have a clear idea of what we're talking about. Yet, how would we define it? It's actually not very, very simple. It's not very straightforward. And there are so many different approaches we could take to this. So let's dig into this a little bit. So we could take like a quantitative approach to a forest. Okay, so I could ask you, how many trees are there in a forest? What is the minimum number of trees? If there are 3 trees, is that a forest? If there are 100, does it have to be 10 million? What if they are 50 meters apart or 5 meters apart? What is the minimum area, right? So clearly we don't have that definition doesn't exist. We could also look at it from a sort of an ecological perspective. So not only look at the trees, because we are assuming that a forest has some tree. We could then get really uncomfortable and start talking about what is a tree, but does a forest only have trees? Is a forest only defined by the fact that there are trees present? Would we expect other animals, other species to be present? How many functional guilds? How many trophic levels? What if all the trees what if there are 10 million of them and they are only 3 meters apart and the area is the size of the state of Maine or something, but they're all the same age? Is that a forest or is that a plantation? What if they are all genetically the same? So what so we clearly we don't have a very good understanding here. We don't have a very good. We can laugh at the bookstore in Atlanta and say, well, these guys don't know what they're doing, but they're only selling books. They're not scientists. Well, I just threw forest at you, and we are as screwed as those owners of that bookstore, because we can't even define a forest. We could also look at its role, sort of the role. So maybe we look at it from a much broader perspective, sort of its water ecology and conservation of species, and how it impacts the risk of fire, erosion, and flooding. So we could define the forest in that context. We could talk about its value in terms of tourism and timber and other resources we can extract. Maybe there's some recreational hunting or fishing involved. So once it gets to a certain size and these resources become sort of reach a certain level, we would consider it a forest. We could also talk about it being sort of self-sustainable, and it can support a number of apex species and or endangered species or whatever. So you can see that there are lots of different ways, different angles we can look at a forest. But at the end of the day, how do we define it? I don't know. I would be very curious if some of you took upon you to challenge us and make that your assignment. Maybe this is what you should write your lecture review about. How would you define a forest? I would be very curious to read about that. I don't know the answer. I don't think there is an answer, but we will certainly reward you if you're willing to go down this route and join this sort of little exercise with us. That's for sure. But you can also look at it sort of, and that's oftentimes in science, because we have this problem of not being able to define things particularly well, we take the reverse approach. So we say, what is not a forest? And then we say, so it is a forest because it doesn't have 80%, it's not understanding water. It's not out in space somewhere. It's not, so we can come up with what it is not, and then we can use that potentially. So this brings us to sort of links to something you will hear about in one of the other lectures about sort of science and falsifiable hypothesis, that you can take the opposite approach, and then you can say that it is not so because it is not that, then it is something else, right? So you can basically sort of go in the opposite direction. That is oftentimes an approach used in science because the actual thing is so difficult to define by itself. So it's not a forest if these things are happening, and therefore if none of those apply, we will consider it a forest. So I hope with this introduction of this course introduction, I have shared a couple of things with you. First of all, you can see that things are not set in stone here, that you are now part of a journey where you hopefully sooner rather than later start to appreciate that the whole concept of science is extremely important, and is supposed to be and is based on very sort of we obey to the science of things. But we also understand that the units that we are working with are probably very wobbly and in many cases very poorly defined. But it's the process that we are trying to improve on. We are trying constantly through scientific methods, through better technologies, we are trying to learn more and more accurately try to define individual things. So that's sort of, and we want you to learn about that and hopefully become part of that body of that community of people for whom this is the key goal, is to learn to define Lego blocks better and better. I also hope you have now have a better understanding of what the whole course is about, how committed we are to scientific communication, why we think it's so important for you to dig into the primary literature, and how you can learn a lot from you yourself investigating primary literature and hearing from your peers what they think is exciting and why they think it's exciting. We hope you have a better understanding of what we're really hoping that you will do, though, how you will use your own curiosity, your own experience, your own interest in different animals and their biology, their evolution, their genetics, their whatever, their role in society and in food webs. You can use that and then become a powerful and effective storyteller. And so really it's about learning more about and interpreting primary literature. That is sort of the key to this. This is the foundation. I really consider the primary literature sort of the currency of science. That is the way we communicate. This is how we put together the best study we possibly can about whatever we are studying, and then we share it with the scientific community, and we use it hopefully to convince politicians to do the right thing, to companies to do the right thing, for people to change their diet, for and animal welfare, to for people to treat people animals the right way. So science can be used as tools in ways so we can do things better and better. You will get experience of with working in groups, so you probably have some of that, but you will certainly have more of that. And in this particular context, you will learn more about doing that in a virtual setting, which is even more challenging. But that's probably going to be the reality for a while for us, right? You will be learning about summarizing both in writing, but also through visual means, how what research studies, what they represent, what were the findings by others. You will do peer review, so you will see other people's writing. You will provide constructive feedback on that, and we think that is very, very important. You will hopefully understand and appreciate more and more the importance of specific terminology. When we say certain things, those words can have a meaning in daily life that is somewhat different from how the same words are being used in scientific terminology and in scientific communication. There are certain elements that science, with hypotheses and experiments and repetition and being quantitative, and all of those are aspects that we will be talking about throughout this course, so that you walk away hopefully with a, maybe you today are not particularly interested in statistics and you think, well, why would I even take any courses like that? Well, you should, because if you are a scientist, if you aspire to become a scientist or work with animals, nobody really cares what you think about the animal or anything really. I'm sorry to say that, but it's what the data is showing. You need to, if you want animals to be treated in a particular way, or you think the way to preserve them, to preserve this species or improve our understanding of behavior in certain ways, you need data. And you need to collect the data in a particular way, but you also need to interpret and analyze the data in a particular way so that you can come across as convincing, and therefore be a disruptor or be somebody who led to change. This is all about learning how to analyze data. So you have to learn how to do that. So you have to take statistics classes. You have to take classes that will enable you, empower you to handle data in a quantitative way. We will talk about the species sort of towards the end. Something that I think is really important, just like forest is a concept that is very debatable and has sort of probably been part of science for as long as science has existed, right? So this is something that evolves continuously. And evolution and quantitative analysis is really what we want you to become more and more of. It's not what you feel or what you think, but it's about letting the data, letting the processes talk. Let what you understand about how cause-effect relationships, how they play out, let that guide you, and let that be sort of your framework that you then use to set up experiments and challenge your own knowledge and that of others. So with that, welcome aboard, and we are very much looking forward to engaging with you over these next 10 weeks.